Imagine that. For just 1 hour, every sound around you disappeared. No music, no conversations, no television, no notifications, no endless stream of videos, only silence. At first, it sounds peaceful, almost comforting. Many people dream of escaping the noise of modern life. They imagine a quiet cabin in the mountains, a deserted beach, or an ancient monastery hidden among forests. They picture themselves finally relaxing, finally breathing, finally finding peace. But something curious happens when silence actually arrives. The first few minutes feel pleasant. Then, the mind begins to move. Thoughts that were buried beneath constant distractions slowly rise to the surface. Memories you hadn't visited in years. Conversations you wish had gone differently. Regrets, questions, unfinished dreams, anxieties about tomorrow. Without external noise, your internal world becomes impossible to ignore. This is why silence frightens so many people. Not because silence is empty, because it is full of everything you have been avoiding. Blaise Pascal understood this centuries before smartphones, before social media, before 24-hour entertainment. He observed something timeless about human nature. People would rather distract themselves endlessly than spend a few honest moments alone with their own thoughts. The world has changed dramatically since Pascal's time, but human psychology has not. Today, distraction follows us everywhere. A phone rests in our pocket. Music fills every empty moment. Algorithms compete relentlessly for our attention. Even standing in line for 2 minutes feels unbearable without something to watch. Silence has become unfamiliar, almost suspicious. If nothing is happening, we instinctively search for something to consume. Another video, another message, another headline, another conversation. Anything except the quiet. The ancient Stoics would have found this deeply concerning. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling the greatest empire on earth, repeatedly sought moments of solitude, not because he disliked people, but because he understood something essential. A person who never spends time alone eventually forgets how to hear their own mind. Imagine standing beside a calm lake at dawn. When the wind stops, the water becomes perfectly still. Only then can it reflect the mountains surrounding it. Your mind works in much the same way. Constant stimulation is like endless wind. Thought after thought, image after image, voice after voice, opinion after opinion. The surface never settles, and because it never settles, you never clearly see yourself. Silence is not the absence of activity. It is the condition that allows clarity to appear. This is why philosophers throughout history intentionally searched for quiet places, mountains, temples, libraries, gardens, not because wisdom exists inside those places, but because silence removes the interference that prevents wisdom from being heard. Socrates spent much of his life asking questions, not only to others, but to himself. He believed that self-examination was impossible without reflection, and reflection requires something our world rarely encourages: stillness. Modern culture celebrates constant productivity. Being busy has become a symbol of importance. People proudly announce how little they sleep, how many emails they answer, how many meetings they attend, how many goals they pursue simultaneously. But activity and progress are not always the same thing. A person can run all day while moving farther away from themselves. Imagine a traveler walking through a dense forest. If they never stop, they may never realize they are heading in the wrong direction. Sometimes, the wisest decision is not taking another step. It is standing completely still. Silence offers exactly that opportunity. It interrupts momentum. It creates space between one thought and the next. And within that space, something remarkable begins to happen. You start noticing the voice that has always been there. Not the voice of your parents, not your teachers, not society, not the endless opinions of strangers, your own. Quiet at first, almost impossible to hear, because it has spent years competing against a world that never stops talking. Most people mistake this discomfort for boredom. It is not boredom, it is withdrawal. The mind has become addicted to stimulation. Every notification delivers a tiny burst of anticipation. Every new piece of information promises excitement. Every distraction postpones another uncomfortable thought. Like any addiction, the absence feels unsettling. But if you remain in the silence long enough, something unexpected begins to change. The discomfort slowly fades. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts become less chaotic. The endless mental noise begins separating into in individual voices. And for perhaps the first time in years, you realize that many of those voices were never truly yours. Silence does something that constant noise never can. It removes your escape routes. When there is no music, no conversation, no endless scrolling, there is nowhere left to run except into yourself. This is why so many people instinctively reach for distraction, not because they enjoy it, because distraction delays confrontation. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries a hidden side of themselves, a part they rarely acknowledge. He called it the shadow. The shadow is not a monster. It is everything you pushed away to become acceptable. The anger you never expressed, the dreams you abandoned, the fears you refused to admit, the parts of yourself that did not fit the image you wanted others to see. As long as life remains noisy, the shadow stays hidden, but silence changes everything. Imagine entering an ancient temple after sunset. The room is empty. No voices echo through the halls, only the faint light of a single candle. At first, you notice the silence. Then, you notice yourself. Thoughts begin surfacing without invitation. Questions you avoided, mistakes you never accepted, dreams you convinced yourself were impossible. This is why solitude often feels uncomfortable before it becomes peaceful. It forces honesty, and honesty is rarely easy. The Stoics understood that avoiding discomfort only makes it stronger. Marcus Aurelius often withdrew from the chaos of Rome, reminding himself that the greatest refuge was not a palace, but a disciplined mind. He knew that peace was not something found outside, it was built within. Modern life teaches the opposite. It teaches us to fill every empty moment, to always be entertained, always connected, always occupied. Yet the more noise surrounds us, the harder it becomes to recognize our own thoughts. Eventually, we begin repeating ideas we never questioned, living routines we never chose, pursuing goals we never truly wanted. Silence interrupts that pattern. It asks one simple question. If every distraction disappeared, who would you be? Most people never answer it, not because they cannot, but because they are afraid of what the answer might require. Sometimes, changing your life begins with doing absolutely nothing, sitting quietly, listening carefully, and allowing the voice you buried years ago to speak again. The greatest irony of modern life is that we have never been more connected, and yet we have rarely been so disconnected from ourselves. We know what strangers are doing on the other side of the world. We know the latest news, the newest trends, the newest opinions. But ask a simple question. What do you truly believe? And many people struggle to answer, not because they lack intelligence, because their own voice has been buried beneath thousands of others. Imagine an ancient sculptor standing before a massive block of marble. Most people believe he creates the statue. Michelangelo believed something different. He said the statue was already inside the stone. His job was simply to remove everything that didn't belong. Perhaps finding yourself works the same way. You do not become yourself by adding more information, more approval, more achievements, more possessions. You become yourself by removing what was never truly yours. The fears you inherited, the expectations you accepted without question, the opinions you repeated simply because everyone else believed them. Little by little, the unnecessary begins to fall away, and beneath it, something authentic starts to emerge. This is why the ancient philosophers valued solitude so deeply, not because they rejected society, but because they understood that without moments of silence, you eventually lose the ability to distinguish your own thoughts from everyone else's. Aristotle once wrote that knowing yourself is the beginning of wisdom, not the end. The beginning, because every meaningful decision depends upon that foundation. How can you choose the right path if you have never discovered who is walking it? How can you build a meaningful life if every goal was chosen by someone else? The truth is, silence will never give you all the answers, but it will reveal the questions that actually matter. And sometimes, the right question changes your life more than 100 easy answers. You may discover dreams you abandoned years ago. You may realize that some ambitions were never yours. You may finally admit that you have been chasing approval instead of purpose. Those realizations can be painful, but they are also liberating, because you cannot change what you refuse to see. The noise of the world keeps you distracted, silence keeps you honest, and honesty is where transformation begins. Imagine standing at the edge of a quiet mountain before sunrise. The world has not yet awakened. No voices, no traffic, no screens, only the wind, the distant sound of birds, and your own breathing. In that moment, nothing is asking you to perform. Nothing is asking you to impress anyone. Nothing is asking you to become someone else. For a brief moment, you are simply allowed to exist. Perhaps that is why silence feels so unfamiliar. It asks nothing from you. It only invites you to meet the person who has been waiting beneath the noise all along. Most people spend their entire lives trying to escape silence. The wisest people learn to enter it willingly, because they understand something that cannot be taught through constant distraction. Peace is not found when the world finally becomes quiet. The world never will. Peace begins when your own mind no longer depends on noise to feel alive. The moment you stop fearing silence, you stop fearing yourself. And when you are no longer afraid of yourself, the opinions of others begin to lose their power. The need for constant validation begins to fade. The endless race slows down. And for the first time, you discover that the voice you were searching for was never outside you. It was patiently waiting on the other side of silence.